Hey there, guys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell, business coach and founder of Adaria Coaching Consulting. And I think one of the staples, one of the things that's always been a key focus of mine when it comes to coaching has been how can I help clients to find more time or more focus in their days. And ultimately, what I do does require an investment of time, and often, particularly when I'm working with clients who are already busy and they're already overloaded, my first job isn't to try and implement something or give them a new marketing strategy. Often my first role is to work with them to either hand things off, restructure the way they work, find resources, and ultimately slightly change the way they approach things so that they can find an additional 2, 5, ideally 10 or more hours back in their week without having to work longer and longer hours. And there's been a bunch of different ways to do this. We built tools like rollaudit.au in order to help them enable this. But funny enough, some of the frameworks that have often proved useful are things that aren't new. They've been around for a while, and this is one of those. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. And as the name will give you a hint, it was actually created by Dwight Eisenhower, who was, of course, a very well-known war general and went on to be a president. And it's a methodology that I have applied for many, many years until I found something that kind of progressed for me personally. And I think everybody's productivity or efficiency methods, I think they evolve. What worked for you last year won't necessarily be the thing that worked this year. And that can often be as much about finding a different thing or a different way of doing things as it can be your style changing. But this was one that I found incredibly useful. It's so simple. And it's really gives you a methodology of analyzing. I used to do it every Monday morning and asking this really important question, and what right now is urgent and what right now is important. Because there are so many different activities within an advice business which are important. But they have no urgency, they have no time constraint around them. And often they get jettisoned for things that come in which seem urgent, but ultimately, sometimes you look at them further down the track and you realize they weren't that urgent. They just had this artificial importance. It's one of the reasons why managing email is so important. Because in email is everybody else, the whole world, demanding your time. And sometimes it's those things that can sway you from doing what you need to do to build a better business so that you can service your clients better and ultimately do more of the work you want to, as well as create the framework for success, both for you, your team, and your client. So hopefully this is useful. Again, it's one of many frameworks out there. But you get a bit of a sense both in this, what the framework is, but also how it can be applied practically in the terms of the way you plan, the way you start the week, the way you finish your week, to make sure that you're balancing the time between working on what other people need to get done and working on what really, really matters because it will move your business forward. So without any further delay, let's hand over and let's jump into the Eisenhower Matrix.
G'day, leverage people. I hope you're well. I hope you're having a great week. And I wanted to have this special drop in because as you would gather from the email I sent out just recently, let me just turn that off. There's a bunch going on in the industry right now. There's a bunch getting in the way of people getting stuff done. There's a bunch of pressure off people. And one of the problems is when there is too much to do, people tend to, their time management principles go out the wall. And often we tend to work on the things that, are urgent but not important. And I've had a couple of conversations with people recently about their workload, about the way they're feeling. And as a result, it sort of led me to sit down end of last week, write that email, but also put together a few things to help. Let me just kick this off by saying what's going on in the industry right now is probably unheralded. I've been working in the industry all the way since FSRA, and I've never seen so many advisors under so much stress and pressure to get things done. And a lot of it being sort of stuff which is definitely significant and concerning. But the problem is there's also a bunch of stuff that I know from experience, if we get it done at a business level, changes a bunch. My goal is not to be unsympathetic here. I guess as a coach, I can sit down and we can unpack all the things you got on, and I can sympathize with a lot of what's going on. But at the end of the day, one of the things is, it is my job to make sure that everybody in this program can move forward. If we talk about things like pricing, marketing, referral partnerships, nailing your engagement process, nailing your review process, having a strong service offer, all of these things I think we'd agree moving into the future advice are key at some kind of level. But the problem is if you can't find time to get things done, or you feel like you're in a position where you just haven't got the energy to deal with it, then often, nothing of this stuff's going to get done, and you don't get the opportunity to join sort of that future over there. So I wanted to share, rather than go deep on certain things, I want to share a few key tips that I've learnt, used, seen others apply that can really, really help. I guess the first thing is if you come into this looking at from the perspective as you don't have time to do anything, and trust me, I get where that comes from. I want you to just take a step back and ask the question whether that is the actual truth. Something I've worked with people on, particularly when you're engaging with clients or you're in the middle of mediation, is an understanding of something called the ladder of inference. And the ladder of inference is where we process information, things people say, stuff that's put out there, business problems in front of us, and we run them through our internal filters, our experiences, our values. And what pops out is often, a conclusion which hasn't necessarily run through the logical areas, but it's just run through that part, mostly the emotional part, and pops out the other side with a view. I often tell a story about an aunt of mine who, when I'd seen her after a very long period of time, she turned around to me, and the first thing Aunt Rose, she said, "Stu, you're looking prosperous." Now I ran it through my filters, and out came out the thought that, what is she saying? I've put on weight? But I took a moment, I sat back, and I took the moment to ask this question. Well, what if that's not true? What if that's not what she said? And I asked her, I said, sorry, what are you referring to? Do you think I put on weight? She said, no, you look really well. You look well dressed and well kept. Now, if I'd have allowed that sort of misunderstanding to proceed and not gone back and asked, what is the data telling me? Then I potentially could have, had a bit of resentment, maybe felt a bit self-conscious, maybe even, ended up feeling not good about myself. So I'm kind of glad I did. And I guess the reason for telling this story is I want you to ask a question. If you've got a bunch of stuff to do, and there's a lot of it coming out for left, right, and center, there's requests from your licensee, there's emails coming in from clients, there's this you need to do, that you need to do, you've got a staff problem to sort out, and it's all coming at 100 miles an hour. In most cases, that's going to impact you in a certain way. It's going to put you in a fight, flight, response mode. And in that mode, generally, we don't tend to think straight. But secondly, the other issue that comes in is you tend to be less productive. We tend to be easily distracted. We tend to, go for the things that are easier to do rather than the big things. Whereas where we've got a bit of space, we tend to be able to look at things with less emotion, kind of like what you do with your clients and the way they might look at things and they give you a call and go, oh my God, am I going to lose everything? And you take a moment and stop and go, no, you're not going to lose everything. Everything looks in really good shape. So today I want to sort of take a moment to step back and go, let's assume for a moment that this I don't have time to do things isn't actually about time. It's about something else. Okay, if somebody feels like they don't have time or they're not clear on what they're doing, there's 5 kind of things that I ask them to consider. And this is kind of the strategic stuff. Matt and Simon were kind enough to join me yesterday. We ran through this, this is the strategic view of too much to do. And the first one is if you feel you haven't got enough time or you've got stuff coming at you, ask yourself, number one, am I clear about my end game? Do I understand what kind of business I'm trying to build? Do I understand sort of the things I'm trying to implement? Do I understand, 3 years from now, what kind of business I want? Because often if you're not clear on what that is, you can end up sort of making decisions en route that take you off track. The second one is understanding why you want it. If you've done some work with me on goals, you'll know that getting to the heart of what's the client's goal, how do we measure it, and finally, why do they want it is really, really key. That's about activating the emotional part of the brain. And in doing so, that's where motivation lives. So if you know your end game and you're very clear on why you want it, not just I want it because it's going to make, things easier, but I want it because, it's going to enable me to spend more time with my family and that makes me feel good. It makes me work at my best. I'm not as stressed. If I work with fewer clients, I can go deeper. I can enjoy the work more. The third one is, do you have the knowledge? In other words, if you want to build a certain service model, or you want to build a certain pricing, or you want to have a certain amount of clients, or you want to be able to work with certain clients, do you know which is the framework within the program or outside that you can go to that matches what you're trying to do? If you don't know this, if you're clear on 1 and 2 and you don't know this, please let me know. I'll find it for you and I will find just the framework that's relevant. If you've got, the know-how, you've got the frameworks to do it. Step 4 is, do you understand the steps? Do you understand the first thing you need to do, the second thing you need to do? It's all very well going, I'm going to do a pricing transition. But what do you do first? Is it go out and talk to clients? Is it analyze your client base? Is it work out how long it takes you? If you need to implement marketing, is the first thing you do go out and buy a CRM, or is it you sit down and you work out your content plan? And finally, and the one I'm going to attack today, once you've got all that in place, are you setting aside time to do it? Now, if you're stuck in the fight, flight, response piece, you don't have time to do things, then the question is, how do we make time? The framework I really want to run you through here is, I think, one of the most useful ways of doing that. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's one of those things that when you grab it and use it, it really makes a whole bunch of difference. And I want to run you through it. And I think I'm going to make available the template, and it's a fillable template, clear ink, beautiful. And in other words, I personally, I have it on my desktop, and every day I come in and I look at what I've got to do, and I organize it according to these 4 principles. So let me run you through it. The Eisenhower principle matrix, it was named after, obviously, Dwight D. Eisenhower, American president, I think former war general, who identified or made the point that the biggest problem that people have with time management is not clearly defining the difference between important and urgent. And it's, you know what, I think since he came up with it, this problem has only got worse, because we are constantly bombarded with emails and this and that and new ways of doing things and pow, wow, amazing, which has made it really hard to discern between what's important and what's urgent. I'm going to give it really clear definitions. Let's start with urgent. In my book and in Eisenhower's book, urgent specifically referred to anything that either needs to be done today or at the latest tomorrow. So in other words, if you've got a statement of advice that you need to get done for a client, but it's not due for a week, you need to ask yourself the question, is this something that I need to get done? I need to even assign time to now, today or tomorrow, or is it not? And if it's not urgent. It might be close to urgent, but it's not urgent. Does that make sense? So in other words, anything that needs to be done today or tomorrow, that would go as an urgent thing. And anything that is beyond that would go as what I'd call not pressing. Various different degrees of not pressing, but the principle is the same. The other one is important. And this is kind of where you have to take a backward step. For me and for Eisenhower, the importance of, or the definition of importance was whether this was something that was going to contribute to your long-term mission. Now, let's pull about some of the terminology out of that and work out what it actually means. What it means is the thing that you're doing or you've slated to do, is it going to make your business better? Is it going to make it easier to do what you're already doing? Is it going to grow the business? Is it going to take the weight off you? In other words, is it something that at a strategic level, at a practical level, is going to move you forward? For example, getting a statement of advice done might be key. It might generate revenue. Sure, that's important. But in the grand scheme of things, if the option is transition the 20% of your client revenue across to a new model, increase your revenue by 20% over the course of 9 months, like James Williamson did. By the way, he's a big user of the Eisenhower Matrix. You've got to ask the question, is that more important than getting one piece of advice out? Now, for many of you who, like most advisors out there, who are really geared to helping, your definition of importance will be to help as many clients as you want to, which is, don't get me wrong, is a great thing. But if you took a backward step and looked at it from I guess, what is good for the many, is getting that one piece of advice going to deliver more value to your business ability to help clients and service clients and work with them and stay around and you to be at your best than that one piece of advice? And in many cases, you might turn around and say, no. I've had a conversation with a number of you who have been in a situation where you have no capacity, and yet you're working really, really hard, but for some reason, the rewards aren't there. And we've had that conversation where I said, well, what do you make on average for a client for a piece of upfront advice? And you might say to me, 3.3, 3.4. And I said to you, well, would you rather have 3 clients paying you 3.3 or 2 clients paying you 5? And in most cases, the argument would be, I'd rather have 2 clients paying me 5. Well, in which case you start to go, well, the important thing would be working out how to do that, because that's going to free up capacity. Now, if you're listening to this going, but I don't want to have to charge $5,000, or I don't want to have to put myself out of sort of reach of working with certain people, I understand that, I really do. But one of the unfortunate side effects of the change that we've been through in the industry is most businesses are doing more now than they were 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I guess in an atmosphere like that, where you're being asked to do more and more for clients, you've got a choice, which is you can either make a commercial decision on this, or the alternative is you can try and run a business that requires you to work harder, smaller profit margins, and all the rest of it. Does that make sense? Let's jump in and use it. A couple of rules of thumb. Generally speaking, at any point in time, you only want maximum of 8 tasks in per quadrant. If you do this well, you won't get them. The goal is we're always going to complete tasks in the top right-hand corner first. So we can bring that in. Let's see if I can connect this without that dropping out. We're going to complete tasks in the top right-hand corner. So we do the urgent first. And then we move quickly on to the other spaces, which is typically you'll either look to delegate things. Let's just resume that share. You'll either use to actually work with your team to delegate certain things. There we go, beautiful. Or you'll work to schedule things. Does that make sense? And then finally, in the bottom corner, you only get round to the stuff that is not urgent and not important later if you've got lots of time. By the way, I'll go through each of them. Quadrant 1, this is where you start. This is the stuff that you do first. This is the stuff that if you come in the morning and you identify there are 3 or 4 things which are important and urgent, as in they really are going to contribute to the long-term health of the business. And on top of that, I need to get it done in a day or 2. You put it in here. These are the first things you do. 1, these are the crises, the deadlines, or the problems you need to solve in the business in order to move you forward. Q2 over here is stuff that is important, but it's not urgent, as in it doesn't need to necessarily be done or started in the next 2 days. This is generally relationships, planning, your personal development, business improvement. The difference in these is this is the stuff you do today. This is the stuff that is really important. You might not do it today, but you need to schedule. You need to open your diary and block out the time and get it done. You with me so far? Down at the bottom, we've got stuff that is not important, but it is urgent. And ideally, you want to be able to delegate this stuff. These are interruptions. These are meetings and other activity stuff. And if you're not very good at delegation, there is a module on the members site called Delegation Mastery, which talks about a framework for being able to sit down and communicate to somebody, here's what I want you to do, here's why I want you to do it, here's the outcome I want you to get. Here's all the things I think need to get done. And by the way, here's the level of delegation I want you to approach this. Number 1 being just do exactly what I'm telling you, all the way down to a level 5, which is go away, research it, implement it, just let me know if anything goes wrong. And the final category is stuff that is not urgent and not important, which is generally time wasters, things that you're doing because they're habitual, things that are pleasant activities, and trivia. Distraction lives in here. So let's jump in. Let's take it up in the morning and identify, I've got a strategy paper to do for a client and they're coming in 2 days. For me, I jump that in here, strategy paper for the Smiths. And I would jump in and go, okay, how long do I think it's going to take me to do that? And let's say I say it's 2 hours. Beautiful. What else have I got? I've got a module that I need to watch on pricing, designing my pricing model. So when does that need to get done? You know what? It doesn't need to get done in 2 days, but it's pretty important. So I'll put that in here, watch pricing module. Beautiful. Let's say the next thing you need to do is you need to follow up and do some research for a client around a strategy you want to implement. It's not urgent. It's something you're looking to do in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. It's not so urgent, so I didn't put it in there. It's important, but it's not something that's so important that I need to be the one to do it. If I could sit down and explain to someone what I need to get done, I could probably get them to do 80% of it. So I'm going to put that in here, research, new advice. And let's say, by the way, watch pricing module, let's say that's an hour and a half. And let's say the researching of the new advice is a 1 hour task. Beautiful. Next up, what have I got? I've got a first appointment. That's coming up. It's coming up in a week's time. I need to sit down and do some work on it, but I'd like to get started now. In other words, I want to get started on it. So I'd say first appointment planning would go in there. And I'm going to pop that in there and say it's a 30-minute thing. The next thing I've got is I've got to do some analysis of licensees. It's not urgent, but it's probably coming up in the next month. And I'm going to break that down into 2 parts. I'm going to say, do the research on licensee. I'm going to pop that in here. And I think it's about a 30-minute brief from me and probably about 4 hours for whoever's doing it. And then on top of it, over here, I'm going to analyze licensing options. And I reckon I'm going to say I'm going to need 2 hours, but importantly, this is no distraction work. You with me? I've got a bunch of stuff I need to do. I'm going to come up with an audit plan. I've got my audit coming up. I need to make sure I'm in place. That's important, and I reckon that's a day. Audit planning. And it might not take me a day, but I want a day uninterrupted. What else have I got up here? I've got some BDM appointments coming up. You know what? I'm not going to do those. I've got a video I'm going to watch about cats. You with me? And if you do this every morning, you come in and you just have a crack at it, what you're going to find is all those tasks that you've got suddenly seem a little bit manageable. I'll give you an example of one I did just the other morning, so you get an idea of how it works for me in practice. So I updated this morning. Did it yesterday, updated it this morning because I just got back from the snow, and I came in and there was a bunch of stuff to do. And I was like, okay, I've got to get really, really clear on where I'm best spending my time. So as you can see, I identified there was some work I needed to do for a couple of clients, and that was my priority. There were some things that I needed to schedule in. I had to plan out my IFA masterclass session. I have a workshop that I'm running for financial wisdom that I need to outline. I've got an email that's going out to a group that I'm speaking for in Fiji. I've got a landing page to develop for another client. I'm doing some work on marketing outsourcing. I've got some stuff that I can delegate. I'm going to ask Jen to set up a networking tracker for dollar growth. I've got to work out a video solution for a client who, unfortunately, their video doesn't work. I've got to communicate some stuff around the accelerator, which I've now dictated. That's out there. I've got to help someone with the branding. And there's some bunch of stuff that I'm going to put off. Upload a new audio file note system because right here and now, that's not a priority. Finalize the monthly snapshot. I don't need to do that right now. It needs to go on Monday. So on Monday, that will go into my urgent bucket. I've got some work on launching the mini programs, but again, it's not urgent. Planning out the accelerator, not right now. I want to keep track of it, and office subletting. So that's what mine looked like. And straight away when I came in, I realized, okay, actually I only need to get 2 things done today. In order for me to not feel like I'm chasing my tail, I would come in and just have a crack at those, which you can see I've done. And then once I'd completed that, I would move on to briefing Jen on what I wanted her to do on the network tracking, to updating it to let her know that we need to solve this, to give her the dictated accelerated communication, have her set it up, and then brief her a little bit about on how to help with that branding. And then the next thing I've moved on to is planning out the after class session. You with me? So in other words, I've suddenly, through this, I've gone to a place where I've knocked off my most urgent things, the things that are going to put me under pressure. And equally importantly, I've identified the things that are important, and I don't want them to slowly trickle in to the urgent thing because they'll put me under pressure, and particularly because a couple of those are big and meeting. So let's say I'm you. I come in and I go, right, so I need to set aside 2.5 hours to get this stuff done. That's my priority for the day. Cool, I would do that. And I would go into my diary, and ideally I do that first. Now there's a lot of different attitudes towards how to plan things out, when to do things. What I've found is if I don't manage my time and I manage my approach to it, I can get into procrastination mode. I can go, you know what, I'll put that off and I'll put that off, and I leave the most difficult task to last. So in other words, the first thing I do is put on my big boy pants, sit down, get myself in the right environment, because this is really key. If you're about to be distracted all the way through this, it's not going to work. And I go, right, this morning I'm going to knock off the strategy paper, and then I'm going to do the first appointment planning. And I'm not going to be drawn on that. That is what I need to get done, because if I get those 2 done, I don't feel under pressure. Then I go over here and I go, right, that's stuff that needs to get done. If I don't lock it in my diary now, if I don't plan ahead, if I don't think about this, about not binging today, that stuff is going to slowly slip into here. So what I do is I go, and when am I going to watch the pricing module? When's a good time that I'm going to be focused, that I'm going to be able to have all the information I have in front of me, so it's handy, that I'm not going to have my phone beeping at me, I'm not going to get interrupted, and I can spend an hour and a half watching the pricing module. And it might not be in the office. I've got to have 2 hours when I'm going to analyze my licensing options. Well, you know what? I need to get some of this information first. So why don't I give myself 4 or 5 days? I reckon that's going to take researching the stuff. It's going to take the person I'm going to delegate it to 4 or 5 days. So I'm going to book that in for next Thursday. And the audit planning, you know what? I'm going to book that in for 2.5 weeks ahead, and make sure that I get delegate to the team to get all the information I need. So when I sit in the room for that hour, I'm not trying to, go out there and get some bits and pieces. There's a story, I wrote a blog a while ago about a guy who came to fit a deck at my house. There were 2 guys who were doing it. The first guy, I think his name is Geraint. He turned up, he did all these measurements, and off he went to Bunnings. He bought everything he needed, and he came back and he just worked. He was done by 3 o'clock. He said to me next day, "Sure, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, but I think it was Tim, the junior, is going to be here and he'll pick up where we left off." Well, Tim turned up in the morning. He had a look at what he had to do. He went to Bunnings. He came back, he did a bit, realized he'd forgotten something, went to Bunnings. Came back, did a bit, realized he'd forgotten something, went to Bunnings. This happened 7 times. And why? Because he hadn't sat down and he hadn't spent a bit of time making sure, doing the hour before to make sure that when he sat down to do it, he could be interrupted. And I guess this is the challenge. You can do this stuff, but you need to book this stuff in. Otherwise, it won't happen. And then eventually that becomes here. And a lot of the stuff that we may be working on in the program, it's the stuff that it's important. You know that if you implement your pricing or you get your marketing right or you get that transition underway, it's going to change. It's going to change your business. It's going to enable you to be under less stress. It's going to enable you to get things done. It's going to enable a team to support you. But if you don't block out the time, in advance, real life's going to come in and take the time. It's the whole, if you basically, other people's demands will just come into your diary and they'll fill up all the space. Finally, I would sit down and go, okay, so I booked that stuff in. I'm going to spend a bit of time to brief Jen or brief my team today on what I need to get done. Because if I can brief them well using I'm going to suggest the delegation mastery template, then they're going to have the information they need. They can go away. And when the time comes that I'm sitting down and working on this stuff, I'll have what I need. And then finally, I'm going to leave this stuff that I don't do in here. And at some point in time, that may move from something that's not a don't do right now into something that's either a delegate, or alternatively, if I'm really lucky, it'll move into being something that is I can do important. Is that with me so far? So hopefully this is useful. If you are struggling with too much to do and you still agree that some of the things that we've spoken about doing, particularly around engagement, your service model, your pricing, if you agree it's still important, and you know what, if you don't agree it's not important, please, let's jump on a call and you can tell me all the reasons why not doing this in the next 3 to 6 months you don't think is going to give a benefit to your business. And you know what, if you've got a point, I'll hold up my hands and say, fair enough. But put it this way, I've not spoken to anyone recently who hasn't agreed that given everything that's going on, pricing and service models and engagement and all that stuff isn't a priority to maintaining business value and making sure you can get hours back in the day. I want to share one more thing. Let's say you come to the end of it, and even after you've planned stuff out, you still find yourself really stuck for time. If you go to our homepage, there is a new lead magnet we've created called the Time Saver Checklist. And well aware that many, many people in the program were struggling, we went through, Jen and I, and we just went, what are the 14 best time-saving tips that we can offer out there? And all of these have got modules associated with them. So if you want to implement one of these, I'm going to tell you where the module is. But equally importantly, I am going to offer you the opportunity, book a call, and I'll run anybody through how to implement this, how to use it. I think in total, when we added up, there was at least 30, possibly even 40 minutes worth of time-saving areas. So the first one, if you are still writing down your file notes, if you're waiting, days before you're getting stuff to the team are sitting around, they're not able to action things, information's coming out of your head, or you're not getting your emails or your blogs out, or you're not process mapping, audio file noting. There is a old module in there. Actually, we've got the new module we're going to upload, which is called Hands Free. And it's got everything from templates around file noting, first appointment file noting, review file noting. It's got blog templates. It's got client communications templates. And using these alone, you're looking at least 2 to 3 hours a week, just based on the fact that most people can speak at 5 times faster than they can type. So again, if you're finding that there is 10 hours of your week where you're sitting down and you're writing stuff, emails to clients, file notes, and you want to break that down from 2 hours, that's the place to start. If you are finding yourself writing a lot of emails to clients, the same emails, or having to produce stuff, or alternatively, you're the one managing your email and you are, you're handing things out. In other words, you are the person they come to, and then you're handing over stuff. There is I would recommend grabbing your most common 50 email templates, and we have a web page on this. If you go to adario.com.au/canned-messages, we have a page where you can click and it will give you the email template. Triage, if you want to implement shared inbox, it is an absolute time saving, and we use Missive for it. And I think I've created a video in there as well I think it's under the Musk method. So it's really messy here. Okay. If you are finding yourself, you've lost a staff member, or you haven't trained people, or people keep asking you about how to do things, or they're not following your process, recording your training via Zoom and asking people to grab that and turn it into processes so they can stop asking you and you can have consistent ways of doing things is the way to go. This is called the Process Mapping Accelerator, I think. And I think the other one is Managing Practice Knowledge. I literally have a competition going on with Jen about how many processes we can map. Our goal is to do one every week. She's ahead of me. She's winning. But it's changed everything. We've now got an operations manual where you can log in, and there's everything about from marketing. And by the way, if you'd like to get access and have a look at some of these processes, I'm more than happy to help you out with that. Batching. One of the problems is when you're doing certain amounts of work, certain types of work, and you're trying to combine them together. Like you're doing a strategy paper, and then halfway through, you've got to switch over and do something else, and then you've got to switch to something else. It's not effective. Elon Musk talks about batching as being the most powerful time-saving trick he's got. So if you're interested in batching, it's really about blocking out your diary. The Musk method has a bunch of stuff on that, as does the anticipated year. And if I was to show you my diary, you'd see I have Monday blocked out, no bookings, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday are client days, and Friday. That's so I can batch things and do certain things. Delegation we've spoken about. Key bit, if you are finding yourself really hard to hand stuff off because you don't have the time or people aren't doing quite what you want, delegation mastery. That will save you, if you nail it, 4 hours a week. Where are we up to? We've got a bit of information about this one. But this is essentially moving your business towards a place where clients can increasingly service themselves. This probably isn't a short-term thing, but if you're interested in some more about how this works, the progressive offer is part of this. And probably not an immediate thing, but I think long-term, if you want to sort of build a business model where it's less you at the middle of it, that's a key thing. Audio, video, and team communication. This is where I talk about tools like Voxer, Otter.ai, Rev, using Zoom for recorded training. And again, this is going to be under the module when it's live, hands-free, which will basically save everything. I mean, communicating with your team via email is just confusing. It makes everything very, very messy, but using something like Voxer, which has just been one of the best tools I've ever implemented in the business. And for those of you who've implemented, not just for communicating with your team, but often with clients, it can make all the difference. Checklist before check. This is all about a book that I read a while ago called The Checklist Manifesto. And I ran a session on this. I believe I'd have to dig out when it was. I'll have to dig out the specific session it was. But anyway, this is about, let's say you're finding that you're getting the same errors come back in your SOAs or some other element that's not coming back right. Sit down and ask yourself, what are the steps that I go through in checking something? I check the spelling. I check the client details. I check the branding. I check the font. I check all the sections of my essay are in there. I check to see the numbers are right. You see, if you can checklist it and you can hand it over to somebody to say, before you give me this document, I want you to go through and tick these boxes to know that you've done a quality check before I am. Extensions we talk about under the Musk method. I think I may also talk about it under maybe just the Musk method, but for example, I use extensions in Chrome. So for example, when I'm in my email inbox and I want to add a task to teamwork, I can do it without jumping into a tool. If I want to, what else can I do in there that I use on a regular basis? If I want to upload something to Drive or Dropbox, if I want to check an email address in ActiveCampaign, if I want to record a quick video to a client, if I want to upload something to Dropbox, if I want to send someone a Calendly link, I can do it all without going out of my browser because it's there under extensions. And the final one I want to mention is having a daily structure. We kind of touched on this, but this is about, what do you do in the morning? Hopefully the Eisenhower thing. What do you do before lunch? Do you do your most difficult work? How do you check in with the team on a daily basis? The review, what got done, what's going well, what's challenging, and then how do you close off the day? Routine, there's a session I'm keen to run in the next few weeks. I had to postpone it for a bunch of reasons around how you can program yourself to bad habits. But again, I'd look at the Musk method for that. Hopefully this is useful. Look, let's say you are currently under the pump right now and you just implement like 4 things. You implement audio file noting. You batch together some time in there. In other words, you block out some time for doing the client work, you block out some time for doing this, and you don't get distracted. You get better at delegating and you implement the Eisenhower principle. And maybe you just start communicating with the team via audio and sending out some communications to clients. You dictate emails, you maybe send out some boxes. Straight off the back there, you would save 3, 13. You're going to save anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week that you're going to get back. Now, if that sounds crazy, it's not. Literally, you could get back at least 2 days a week just by implementing 4 things. But I do want to bring it back to one thing. No one would deny that what's going on in the industry right now is probably unprecedented, and it's putting people under a lot of pressure. But at the heart of it is it's this thing about, I don't have time for things. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And the feeling overwhelmed I get. But I don't have time for things is a different argument, and it's a different thing. And I guess there's 2 ways you can approach this. You can say, you know what? I don't have time. I'm just going to keep running as hard as I can. But I think you and I both know the problem with that as a strategy is it only leads to one place. It leads to the burnout, right? You get to a point where you don't enjoy what you're doing. You're not motivated by it. You spend all your time doing the things you hate, and you never manage to get out of it. And I think the problem with that is if you stay in that for long enough, it's not fun. I think everybody I've spoken to would agree that what's coming on the other side of this is a very, very exciting place to be. We know the demand for advice isn't dropping. We know that the number of advisors in the industry is going to drop. And we know that the bottom line is the price of advice is going to rise until such time as it's reversed, which means that there's going to be even more demand on your time. There's going to be more clients needing your help. The important thing is to get you doing the stuff that matters. There's a lot of urgent stuff in there. And there's a lot of stuff that really is important. If you're struggling to get hold of it, but you still agree that some of the stuff that we started off, we agreed that we were going to work on, they're things that you can see yourself moving the business forward, removing you from the middle, empowering your staff, increasing your profitability, increasing your capability to get things done, better clients to work with, having better systems in the back, but the only thing stopping you is having too much to do, then have a look at whether you can take control of certain elements. Because as Eisenhower himself said, he said, you can achieve anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. And some of the most successful people in the world are those who can understand that there is a place, things you got to say yes to. There's things you can't say no to, but you have to get other people to do. And then there's things you just need to, put up the hand and say, not now, later. Prioritization is the key. Elimination is where you get the big bucks. I hope this has been useful. As I mentioned, if there's anything I've talked about here that you're sitting here going, you know what, that's great, but how do I implement it? Or I'd really like to get that bit of time back. And if that's the only thing stopping you, is either time or energy. Energy is a factor of motivation, by the way. I really want to help. When I sat down and wrote the email I did last week, it came from a place where I guess a little bit of frustration, but a place of realizing that you've got 2 options. You can either sort of accept things the way they are, or you can question what they are and go, well, hold on a moment, is there something we can do? Is there something we can change? Is there some way we can help people that is going to get them out of that sort of fight, flight, urgent response and into a space where they can do great work? And I believe that a lot of what we can work on and we are working on will improve every single business on the program. But if the only thing stopping us from doing it is finding time, finding focus, finding the space, knowing what to work on, all of that sort of stuff, then that is a problem that is absolutely can be solved. It's been solved for many, many times before. Stephen Covey, Dave Allen, all these kind of people, they've got the tools, they've got the frameworks. But as Bruce Lee famously said, you might know what they are, but that doesn't mean you're doing it.
So there you have it, ladies and gents, the Eisenhower Matrix. I know it's so simple, but you know what? A lot of those frameworks out there that are useful can be so simple. And often, it's not about the stiff complexity of the framework. It's about how you apply them practically in terms of planning for the week or whatever it might be. Hopefully that's been useful. That's it from me. I hope you're enjoying it. Please feel free to leave a review if you are enjoying it. It's the best way of sort of letting me know what you love about it, and importantly, letting other people know that it's something worth listening to. That's it from me. Whatever you're doing, have a great week.